I caught my wife leaving my son's bedroom late at night, and I haven't slept peacefully since. Some moments brand themselves into your memory. Not because they're loud or violent, but because they're quiet. Subtle. Because they don't make sense right away, but they demand that you pay attention. It was a Wednesday night. I remember because I'd fallen asleep on the couch halfway through some crime docuseries Rachel had begged me to watch with her. I woke up sometime after midnight, thirsty, neck stiff, and the house completely still, that kind of eerie stillness where even the fridge hum feels too loud. I padded toward the kitchen, rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, when I saw it. A shadow in the hallway. Someone gently closing the door to Brandon's room. It was Rachel. She didn't see me at first. She was barefoot, wearing one of my old hoodies, the one she always said made her feel safe. Her phone was in her hand, and her other hand lingered on the doorknob longer than it should have. She wasn't moving fast, but she wasn't casual either. She looked like someone trying to be invisible. When she finally turned and saw me, she flinched. "Oh," she whispered, hand over her heart. "You scared me." "What are you doing?" I asked, more confused than accusing. "It's late." Rachel's eyes flickered, just for a second. And then came the quick recovery, the small smile she always used when trying to disarm tension. "Brandon had trouble sleeping," she said. "Said he was having weird dreams. I was just checking in." I nodded slowly, but something felt off. My gut didn't fully buy it. Still, I let it go. We were both half asleep, and I didn't want to make a thing out of nothing. But that was the moment everything shifted. Let me rewind for a second. Rachel and I have been married for 3 years. I met her after a messy divorce. She was vibrant, smart, warm in all the ways my ex-wife never was. She wasn't just good to me, she was amazing with Brandon. At the time, he was 14, withdrawn, understandably cynical after everything he'd seen. His mom, my ex, had walked out when he was 10. Rachel never tried to replace her, but she stepped in with this calm confidence that somehow earned his trust. She didn't talk down to him. She asked questions, listened, really listened, and slowly pulled him out of his shell. So, yeah, when I saw her walking out of his room that night, I told myself, don't be paranoid. She's been like a second mom to him. Nothing more. But I couldn't shake the image. Couldn't stop replaying how unsettled she looked. How long she stood at the door. The next morning, everything seemed normal. Rachel made pancakes. Brandon sat across from her at the table, laughing about some meme he'd seen. The way they interacted, it was casual, easy. But I watched them more closely than usual. That's the thing about suspicion. Once it slips in, even the smallest things start to feel loaded. A few days later, I was in the garage organizing tools when I overheard something I wasn't meant to hear. Brandon and Rachel were in the living room. She thought I was still out back. Their voices weren't loud, but the garage door was slightly ajar, and her tone had this nervous energy to it. "I just want you to be careful," she said. "What you watch, what you get curious about, it matters." "I wasn't doing anything wrong," Brandon replied. He sounded defensive. "No, you weren't. But it's better if we talk about it instead of pretending it doesn't exist." I stopped what I was doing. Rachel's voice lowered. "I know it's uncomfortable, but you're 17, and I'd rather you understand things the right way than get confused by stuff online." I backed away from the door like it was hot. That's when it hit me, she must have walked in on him watching something that night. That's what she saw. I exhaled, trying to shake off the heat rising to my face. She wasn't doing anything inappropriate. She was just trying to help him navigate that stuff. I mean, it's awkward, sure. But she'd always been good with boundaries. Still, part of me couldn't help thinking, why didn't she tell me? Why did she keep it to herself? That night, I brought it up. We were in bed, lights off, but I could tell she wasn't asleep yet. Her breathing hadn't settled. I rolled onto my side. "So, did something happen with Brandon the other night?" Rachel tensed. "Why do you ask?" "I overheard you two earlier," I admitted. "In the living room. You were talking about content. Online stuff." She was quiet for a moment, then sighed. "Yeah. I walked in on him watching something he clearly didn't expect to be seen watching. Like, adult stuff. She nodded. It was uncomfortable. For both of us. I let that sit. And you didn't tell me. Rachel turned toward me. I didn't want to embarrass him. He's at that age. He's figuring things out. I thought if I handled it gently, it wouldn't turn into some dramatic dad freaks out moment. I wasn't sure whether to be grateful or insulted. I'm his father, I said. I should be part of that conversation. I know, she whispered. But sometimes, you come in too hard. And I didn't want to shut him down. That stung. Because she wasn't entirely wrong. I've always tried to raise Brandon with discipline, structure. After what his mom did, I couldn't afford to be soft. But maybe I'd overcorrected. Maybe I'd made it harder for him to come to me. Still, there was something about Rachel's voice that felt layered. Like she was holding something back. Is that all that happened? I asked quietly. She paused. Yes. But she didn't say it like she believed it. Over the next week, things started shifting in subtle ways. Rachel and Brandon had more private conversations. Whispers. Doors closed more often. I'd come home from work and hear their voices from the kitchen, low, hurried, only to stop when I walked in. I started checking myself. Was I being paranoid again? Was I just jealous that my wife and my son had formed a bond one wasn't part of? Then, one Saturday, I found something that made my stomach drop. I was cleaning the den. Rachel's old laptop was still open from earlier. I wasn't snooping, not really, but an open tab caught my eye. It was a website for an underground social club. The kind of place older men went to meet young women, legally, but questionably. And it had a guest tour request pending. Under Rachel's name. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Why would she be looking at something like this? What did this have to do with us? Or worse, what did it have to do with Brandon? I didn't confront her right away. I couldn't. I needed to be sure. That night, I watched them. At dinner. She handed him a napkin and their fingers brushed. He smiled, shy. She smiled back. And suddenly, something shifted in me. This wasn't just about trust anymore. This was about the line, the invisible, sacred line, that I feared she might have crossed. And I was terrified to find out the truth. They say curiosity is a dangerous thing. But I wasn't curious. I was scared. Scared of what I might find. Scared of what it might mean if I didn't look deeper. After I saw the tab open on Rachel's laptop, the one about the Silver Club, some exclusive members-only lounge for men interested in alternative social experiences, my mind wouldn't shut off. There was a guest pass form, already half-filled with Rachel's name and our address. And worse, the notes field said, "For my stepson, educational visit." That phrase kept echoing in my head like a siren. Educational visit. What kind of place needs that kind of education? I didn't sleep much that night. I just kept watching her. Watching them. Brandon seemed his usual self, maybe a little more secretive than he used to be. But 17 is a weird age. I tried reminding myself that I was no angel at that age either. Hormones, confusion, a body moving faster than the brain could keep up with. And Rachel had always been good at balancing it. Until now. I could have asked her right then. I should have. But I didn't want her to know I'd seen the site. Not yet. I wanted to understand why. Why would she take that kind of risk? Why would she do something so inappropriate? So I waited. Sunday came and went quietly. Too quietly. Rachel said she was going to the grocery store around 4 p.m. I watched her drive off. About 5 minutes later, I knocked gently on Brandon's door. "Hey, bud. Got a minute?" He was sitting at his desk, half turned toward me, earbuds in, looking a little caught off guard. "Yeah," he said, tugging them out. "What's up?" I tried to keep my tone casual. "Your stepmom said something about you guys spending time together lately. Everything good?" Brandon blinked, eyes darting toward the hallway. "Yeah. Fine. She mentioned you were having some growing pains. I chuckled, trying to soften it. You know, the usual teenage stuff. He rolled his eyes, like any teenager would. She's just trying to help. How's she helping? I asked. That made him pause. Talking, mostly. About stuff you and I don't really talk about. I exhaled slowly. Like what? His gaze dropped. Things guys my age are curious about. There it was. No denying it. Okay. That's fair. You know, I don't want you to ever feel like you can't talk to me. Even if it's awkward. He smiled a little. Yeah. I know. But he still looked uncomfortable, not with the conversation itself, but with what he wasn't saying. That told me everything. Later that night, I waited until Rachel was in the shower. I opened her laptop again. The site tab was gone. But the browsing history hadn't been cleared completely. She'd filled out the application. Hit submit. Monday. 6 p.m. A private guest tour. The location was about 45 minutes away. A quiet neighborhood outside town. Classy on the outside, but I'd seen enough documentaries to know the type. They marketed themselves as exclusive, safe, mentorship-driven. But they were still clubs that trafficked in blurred boundaries and moral loopholes. I shut the laptop, my hands shaking. There was no way she was taking him there. No way. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed while she dried her hair in the bathroom. My pulse was thumping so loud I could barely hear the blow dryer. When she came out in her robe, she looked at me with that tired, soft smile. Everything okay? I nodded too quickly. Yeah. Just thinking. About what? I swallowed hard. You've been spending a lot of time with Brandon lately. Her smile faltered. Just a little. He's been opening up. That's a good thing, right? It is. I hesitated. As long as we're on the same page. She sat down beside me. Why wouldn't we be? I looked her dead in the eye. Rachel, what exactly are you trying to teach him? That froze her. I'm not, she started, then stopped. Look, he's 17. He's confused. He's been exposed to some pretty distorted things online, and it's affecting how he sees women. How he sees relationships. I didn't want him internalizing that. So your solution was what? To book a visit to a grown man's lounge. I said it quietly, deliberately. She paled. You went through my laptop. I didn't have to go through anything. It was open. Rachel stood up, wrapping her arms tightly around herself. I wasn't going to do anything wrong. I thought maybe seeing real people, in real settings, where things are safe and consensual, would help him realize that what he sees on the screen isn't healthy. I was going to be there the entire time. You were going to take my son to a place like that. My voice cracked. And you didn't think to tell me? I knew how you'd react. Yeah, because it's completely inappropriate. She backed away from me, and her eyes welled up. I wasn't thinking like that. I was just trying to help him. He's not talking to you. He's lost. And I didn't want him going down the same rabbit holes so many boys do. I was scared. I rubbed my hands down my face, heart thudding in my chest. What if someone saw you there? What if he misunderstood the situation? What if? I shook my head. Rachel, I don't even know what to say. I wasn't planning anything physical or suggestive. It was going to be like an educational tour. Controlled. Like watching a play, not participating in it. That's what they told me. You've been talking to these people. Rachel bit her lip. That was all the answer I needed. The next morning, I drove Brandon to school like normal. But I couldn't stop staring at him when we hit red lights. He was listening to music, oblivious, mouthing lyrics. He didn't look like someone in crisis. He looked like a kid. My kid. And I felt like I'd failed him. Not because he watched something inappropriate, that happens. But because I hadn't created a space where he could ask questions. Because someone else stepped into that role while I was busy being the rule enforcer. But Rachel. Rachel had overstepped in a way I couldn't ignore. I called the club. Used a burner email and asked what their mentorship programs were. The response came within the hour. Yes, they provided educational experiences for young men at the request of legal guardians, with chaperone options available. They weren't breaking laws. But they were exploiting loopholes. And Rachel had apparently bought the pitch. That night, I told her to cancel the appointment. She looked down, ashamed. I already did. Good, I said. But the trust? That didn't recover so easily. We went to bed without speaking. I stared at the ceiling for hours. Not just because of what she almost did, but because I still didn't know the full story. What else had she been hiding from me? And why was Brandon suddenly so withdrawn again, like he was carrying a secret too? As I drifted toward sleep, I remembered something Rachel said weeks ago when we were arguing about parenting. If you keep shutting him down, eventually he's going to look for answers in the worst places. And now I couldn't help but wonder. What if she was one of them? Sometimes, silence can be louder than any argument. After that night, Rachel and I stopped talking about it, the club, the emails, the trust she broke. But it was always there. Hovering between us like smoke that wouldn't clear. She went about her days like everything was fine. She still cooked dinner. Still folded laundry. Still kissed my cheek on her way out the door. But that kiss, it felt hollow now. Mechanical. I couldn't bring myself to kiss her back. And Brandon. He was changing in front of me. Not in the way you expect a teenager to grow up, not in that quiet, moody, brooding kind of way. It was more tense. Edgy. Like he was waiting for something to blow up. He wouldn't meet my eyes anymore. One night, I caught him out on the back porch around midnight, just sitting there. Hoodie pulled over his head. Knees to his chest. Staring at the stars. I stepped out quietly. Couldn't sleep. He didn't look at me. Guess not. I sat next to him, careful not to get too close. You and Rachel talk much lately? He tensed. No. There was something in the way he said it. Not anger. Not annoyance. More like disappointment. I nodded slowly. She told me about the club. That she canceled everything. He finally turned to look at me. So, that's why she won't even look me in the eye now. I raised an eyebrow. She told you that? No. I just know. I hesitated. Did she tell you what she was planning to do? He didn't answer right away. Then, he whispered, yeah. She said it was supposed to be educational. And how did that make you feel? Brandon scoffed. Weird. I mean. I get it. She thought she was helping. But it's not something I wanted. I think, she just didn't know what else to do. I blinked. You didn't ask for it. No, he looked up at me now. Dad, I was embarrassed when she walked in that day. I wanted to disappear. But then she sat down and started talking like it was normal. Like we were just discussing homework. I didn't want to talk about that stuff. Especially not with her. I swallowed hard. Why didn't you come to me? He looked away. Because you always act like there's a right answer. A right way to feel. And I don't even know how I feel most of the time. That hit me like a punch to the chest. I wanted to tell him I was trying. That I meant to be the steady one. The clear-headed parent. The guy who could protect him from the world. But maybe I was too busy trying to protect him to actually listen to him. I'm sorry, I said, finally. That I made it hard to come to me. He didn't respond. But he didn't move away either. Small victories. Rachel came into the kitchen the next morning while I was making coffee. She looked exhausted. Like she hadn't slept in days. I heard you talking to Brandon last night, she said softly. I nodded. He told me everything. That he didn't ask for help. That he felt cornered. She leaned against the counter. I was trying to be the parent you weren't. That stung. But I kept my voice steady. There's a difference between parenting and stepping over a line. I know, she said quietly. I just didn't want him to grow up feeling like I did. Alone. Confused. Ashamed. Her voice cracked. That was the first time I realized she was carrying something too. Later that afternoon, I went through the old family photos. Not on my phone. The physical ones. Stuffed in a box in the closet that smelled like dust and time. There were barely any pictures of Rachel from her teenage years. She always said her parents were distant, always working, not the memory-making type. But I found one, her, maybe 16, sitting alone at a party. A red plastic cup in hand. Everyone around her blurry, laughing, dancing. She looked like she didn't belong. Now I wondered what that picture didn't show. That night, after Brandon went to bed, I sat with her on the couch. I want to ask you something, I said gently. Not as an accusation. Just, as someone trying to understand. She looked at me cautiously. What happened to you when you were Brandon's age? Her eyes filled instantly. She tried to look away, but I didn't let her. Rachel. She took a long, ragged breath. When I was 17, my mom left. Just packed a bag one morning and disappeared. My dad wasn't built to raise a daughter. Not emotionally. He'd throw money at things instead of talking. And when I started acting out, staying out late, dating older guys, he didn't ask why. He just told me to stop embarrassing him. I stayed silent. Let her keep going. I got involved with a guy 10 years older. Thought he loved me. He didn't. He used me. And when it ended, I didn't know how to cope. I hated myself. I hated men. I hated everything. She wiped at her eyes. I swore if I ever saw a kid heading toward that darkness, I'd do something. Say something. Try to stop them before it got that far. I felt my own throat tightening. But Rachel, that wasn't your story to rewrite. She nodded, biting her lip. I know. I know that now. But in the moment, it felt like I had to do something. Like I was the only one who could. We sat there in silence for a while. Finally, I reached out and took her hand. I believe you were trying to help. But that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. She nodded again. And for the first time in weeks, we sat together without the smoke hanging between us. The next day, I got a text from Brandon after school. Can we talk later? Just us. I told him yes. Of course. When we sat down that evening, he looked nervous. Almost guilty. I need to tell you something, he said, twisting his hands in his lap. Something I didn't say before. My stomach turned. Go ahead. She didn't just talk to me that day. After she walked in. I think she saw how uncomfortable I was, and she said I shouldn't be ashamed. That it's normal. But then she said she could show me something better. Something real. I sat up straighter. What do you mean? Brandon shook his head quickly. Not like that. She didn't do anything. But she showed me that club website. She told me she thought it could help. She said she might even take me if I wanted. My chest tightened. And how did that make you feel? Brandon looked down. Weird. Confused. I thought maybe she was trying to bond with me, but it didn't feel right. So I said no. Relief hit me like a wave, but it was followed by something darker. She didn't just plan it. She invited him. Even if he said no, that line was crossed long before I found out. That night, Rachel and I sat on opposite ends of the bed. I talked to Brandon, I said. She turned toward me slowly. What did he say? That you showed him the site. Told him you might take him. Her eyes welled up again. He was spiraling. I didn't know what else to do. I thought. I don't care what you thought, Rachel. That wasn't your place. That was dangerous. You crossed a line, and I don't know if I can come back from that. She didn't respond. She just looked down at the floor, silent, shaking. And for the first time, I realized she might not be the only one hiding something. Because earlier that day, I'd received an email from someone I didn't recognize. Subject line. Your wife's been a guest at the Silver Club before. I stared at the subject line for what felt like an hour. Your wife's been a guest at the Silver Club before. No sender name. Just a random Gmail address with a string of letters and numbers that didn't tell me anything. My hands hovered over the keyboard, unsure whether to click or delete. It felt like a trap. Or worse, like I was about to confirm something my heart didn't want to know. But I clicked. Because once doubt settles in, it demands answers. The message was short. Just 2 lines. You don't really know your wife. Check the guest list for March 18, 2022. She went there without you. No attachment. No link. Nothing else. Just that. I read it again. March 18, 2022. That date rang a bell, but not immediately. I opened my calendar app and scrolled back. That was the weekend I had flown to Denver for a client meeting, the one that got rescheduled last minute. Rachel had insisted I go anyway. She said it would be good for me to focus on work and decompress. God. Did she plan it? That night, I didn't sleep. I waited until Rachel was out running errands the next morning and then went to her home office. It felt wrong. Invasive. But after everything, trust felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for until I found a manila envelope tucked behind her filing cabinet. It was labeled Old Taxes, but inside were glossy event flyers. One of them had Silver Society, Members Only Gala, printed in raised silver ink across the top. The date. March 18, 2022. My stomach twisted. I flipped it over. There, in the RSVP section, was a name scrawled in her handwriting. Rachel Avery +1, guest confirmed. She hadn't gone alone. I dropped the envelope like it burned. When she got home that afternoon, she found me sitting at the kitchen table, the flyer laid out in front of me like evidence in a courtroom. Her face went pale the second she saw it. You lied to me, I said, quietly. You told me you'd never been to that club. That you only researched it for Brandon. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. I stood. Was it him? Was it someone else? Was it just curiosity? I need the truth, Rachel. All of it. She finally sat down across from me, hands shaking. I didn't lie. I didn't tell you. That's a lie by omission, and you know it. She looked like she might break. It wasn't what you think. Then tell me what it was. She took a deep breath. It was a girls' night that turned into something else. A friend invited me. She said it was this private event where people went to explore, talk, be open. I didn't know what it really was until we were already inside. By then, I was too embarrassed to leave. Who was the guest? I asked. The +1. Her eyes dropped. My friend brought her boyfriend. They counted him as my guest. I swear, I didn't go with anyone. Did you do anything? My voice cracked. With anyone? She shook her head quickly. No. I watched. That's it. I was curious. I stayed too long. But I swear, I didn't cross that line. The worst part? I wanted to believe her. I wanted to take her word and erase the doubt. But the seed was already planted. And it was growing roots fast. Later that night, I sat with Brandon again. He'd started warming up to me. Slowly. He still didn't trust the air in the house, and honestly, neither did I. Dad, he said, hesitating. I need to ask you something. Go ahead. If you and Rachel split up, do I have to go live with Mom? That question. That raw fear behind his eyes. I shook my head. No. You're almost 18. You have a say. But why would you ask that? He looked down at the floor. Because when you and Rachel fight, it feels like I'm going to lose both of you. That hit me like a freight train. I reached over and put a hand on his shoulder. You're not losing anyone. I promise. You come first, no matter what. He gave a faint nod. But I knew, promises like that don't mean much when the world's already cracked beneath your feet. I confronted Rachel again the next morning. "Who sent the email?" I asked. "What email?" I showed her. She paled. "I don't know. I swear. I haven't talked to anyone about that night. Someone knew. Someone saw you. And they wanted me to know." Her expression changed. From fear to something darker. Realization. It was Nina. Nina. She nodded. "The friend I went with. We haven't spoken in months." She felt like I judged her for going back. Said I acted better than her when I backed out. Maybe she wanted to stir the pot. I leaned against the counter. Well, she succeeded. Rachel sat down heavily. "I didn't want to lie to you. I just didn't want to be that person in your eyes. I wanted to be someone you could trust. A real parent to Brandon." I laughed bitterly. "Real parents don't take kids to sex clubs, Rachel." Her face crumpled. I wasn't thinking straight. I thought I was being proactive. But I see now, I crossed lines I shouldn't have even been near. There it was. Admission. Maybe even regret. But it didn't erase what was already broken. The tension in the house grew thicker. Brandon started spending more time at his friend Tyler's. He said it was for group projects, but I knew better. He was escaping the same storm I couldn't outrun. I sat alone in the living room one evening, flipping through channels I wasn't watching, when Rachel came in. "I made an appointment," she said softly. I looked up. "With who?" "A therapist. For me. I need help." I thought I could carry all this alone, but clearly I can't. That was the first time she'd said it. Out loud. That she wasn't okay. "I think we should do counseling. Together. If you're willing," she added. I didn't respond right away. My chest was tight. "I don't know if I can trust you again, Rachel." "I understand," she said. "But maybe we can figure that out together. Or at least try." I nodded slowly. "Okay. We'll try." But something still didn't sit right. A piece of the puzzle that didn't fit. A few days later, Brandon was at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone while eating cereal. I sat across from him, sipping my coffee. Just a quiet, normal moment. Until he said, "Dad." "Yeah. That flyer, the Silver Club one. I saw it in Rachel's office months ago. Before all this happened." I blinked. "You did?" "Yeah. It was in a folder marked job stuff. I thought it was for a work event." I put my mug down slowly. That folder was where she kept her consulting materials. For relationship seminars, coaching clients, those intimacy workshops she said she occasionally helped with. Something clicked. She didn't just attend that club. She worked with them. That night, I pulled the folder myself. The same one Brandon had mentioned. Inside were papers, contracts, guest agreements. And a letter, dated 2 months before the March 18th event. It was from Silver Society. "We look forward to welcoming you as a guest speaker and mentor at our private event." I felt like the room was spinning. She didn't just go as a guest. She had been part of it. An educator. An insider. She'd hidden more than I ever imagined. And now, I had no idea what was real anymore. I stared at the letter in my hands for a long time. "We look forward to welcoming you as a guest speaker and mentor at our private event." A printed signature at the bottom. A branded letterhead. It was official. Rachel hadn't just attended that Silver Society event. She had worked it. Every emotion inside me curled into something sharp: disbelief, anger, confusion. And underneath it all, the kind of betrayal you don't come back from. The kind where a part of your marriage silently withers, and you don't even realize it until you're holding the dried-up remains. I heard the garage door open. She was home. And this time, I wasn't going to wait for the right moment. I wasn't going to swallow questions or wait for explanations. I was done pretending we were okay. She stepped inside, carrying a bag of groceries and humming some soft tune, like everything was normal. Like our entire life hadn't quietly turned into a stage play with missing lines. "Hey," she said. "Can you give me a hand with?" I placed the letter on the counter in front of her. Her voice stopped mid-sentence. I watched her face change. Slowly. Like someone sinking underwater. The color drained from her cheeks. "You found it," she whispered. "You said you didn't lie," I said. "You said you just omitted things." "This isn't omission. This is deception." She closed her eyes, breathing in slowly. I didn't know how to explain it. Not without it sounding worse than it was. "Oh. Enlighten me." I was invited to speak there. Just once. They reached out to a few intimacy consultants, and at the time, I thought I could handle it. That I could use it as a professional experience. Professional. I laughed bitterly. "You were coaching people inside a sex club. Then months later, you decide to take my teenage son there." Her eyes flashed. "I didn't coach that night. I spoke on a panel earlier that year." "Yes, I kept that from you." I was scared. Scared of how you'd see me. I stepped back. "You should have been more scared of what it would do to us." She blinked rapidly, trying to compose herself. "I made mistakes, Tom. But it wasn't malicious. I never cheated. I never touched anyone. I took a job and made a bad decision, and then a worse one with Brandon." That name again. Just hearing it in this context made my stomach twist. Brandon had become quiet again. After his little comment about the flyer, he'd returned to his usual sullen self, only this time, it wasn't teenage angst. It was discomfort. Distance. Like he was watching everything unravel and didn't know how to stop it. The following evening, I caught him in the garage, half sitting on the washing machine, scrolling his phone. I leaned against the doorframe. "Can we talk?" He shrugged. "Sure. I want to ask you something. And I need you to be honest with me." He nodded slowly. "When Rachel took you to that club, did anything happen? Anything that made you uncomfortable?" He blinked, surprised. "What?" "I mean it, Brandon. I need the truth." He frowned. "No. Nothing happened. We didn't even go inside." She parked, started talking about how some people live differently, and then I freaked out. She apologized like 20 times and drove me home. I studied his face. He wasn't lying. His discomfort was real, but not because of anything she did there. It was because she took him there in the first place. "That should have never happened," I said quietly. He nodded. "I know." I sat down beside him. "She made a mistake, Brandon. A big one. And I'm trying to figure out what to do about it. But I want you to know, you're not responsible for any of this." "I feel like I am," he said. "Like I triggered everything." "You didn't." "Yeah, but if I wasn't watching those videos." "Stop." I put a hand on his shoulder. "That was normal curiosity. That wasn't your fault. Her reaction. Her choices. That's on her." He nodded again, slowly this time. "I just don't want you two to split because of me." I didn't have a good answer for that. Because deep down, I didn't know if splitting up was even avoidable anymore. Rachel asked to go to therapy together. I agreed, partly because I wanted to believe we could fix this, and partly because I wanted someone else in the room when we unpacked the weight of all these secrets. Our first session was quiet. Reserved. The therapist, a calm woman named Janice, listened carefully as we spoke. She didn't rush. She let the pauses sit. It wasn't until halfway through the session that I finally asked the question that had been choking me for days. "Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me the truth?" Rachel wiped a tear. "Because I didn't trust myself. I was afraid of who I'd become. I'd spent years shaping myself into a woman who belonged in your world, stable, composed, professional. That night, when I accepted that invite, it felt like stepping into a shadow version of myself. And I was curious about her. I hated that." Janice leaned forward gently. "So you tried to suppress it?" Rachel nodded. "I buried it. Pretended it didn't happen. But then Brandon, he forced me to confront something I hadn't dealt with. And I overcompensated. I tried to guide him when I hadn't even processed my own confusion. Janice glanced at me. How does that sit with you, Tom? I took a moment. I hear her. I believe she's sorry. But there's a scar now. A real one. And I don't know if I can live with the doubt. Rachel turned to me. What can I do to rebuild that trust? I shook my head. I honestly don't know. A week passed. Then another. We went through the motions. Talked to Janice. Kept things civil. Brandon kept his head down, waiting for us to either fall apart or figure it out. Then came the final straw. I got a phone call from a colleague. Someone who'd attended a weekend relationship summit in Miami. Hey, Tom. Was Rachel in Miami last weekend? I blinked. No. Why? She was on the roster here. Spoke on a panel about boundaries and blended families. My blood froze. When I asked Rachel later that evening, she looked me dead in the eye and said, No. I haven't spoken at any event since everything happened. I canceled everything. I didn't tell her about the phone call. I just nodded and walked away. That night, I logged into our shared computer. Searched her calendar. Nothing. Emails. Nothing suspicious. Then I checked her Google Drive. And found a slide deck titled, Parenting Between the Lines, When Stepmoms Cross Boundaries. The title was ironic. Or cruel. The last modified date. 3 days ago. I closed the laptop. Sat there in the dark kitchen. Alone. The next morning, I made coffee, got dressed, and took Brandon to school. He looked nervous the whole ride, like he was waiting for something. When he opened the door to get out, I stopped him. Hey. He turned. Yeah. If things change soon, you'll be okay. I promise. He stared at me for a second, then nodded. You too, Dad. I watched him walk into the building and disappear into the crowd. I had a choice to make. And I already knew what it was. You always think you'll see it coming the moment your marriage ends. A screaming match. A slammed door. Suitcases on the porch. But sometimes, it ends in silence. Sometimes, it ends with two people sitting at opposite ends of the couch, coffee mugs in their hands, and a truth so heavy between them it sucks all the oxygen out of the room. That's how it happened for us. No fight. No screaming. Just me, saying, I saw the presentation, Rachel. I know you went to Miami. And her, staring at her lap, unable to meet my eyes. She didn't deny it. Didn't scramble to make up an excuse. She just let out a long, shaky breath. I wanted to tell you. I couldn't. Why not? I asked. We've been in therapy. You said you were being honest now. I was afraid, she said quietly. I knew if I told you, it would be over. So instead, you lied to delay the inevitable. I thought maybe if we had more time, if things settled, I could explain it better. That you'd understand why I did it. But you still lied. She finally looked up at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed, tired. I didn't go to cheat. I didn't go to run away. I went because I needed to feel like myself again. Not just the wife who screwed up. Not the stepmom who crossed a line. Just Rachel. The professional. The expert. The woman who used to be respected. I shook my head. Do you even hear yourself? You built your career on helping families. But you took my son to the edge of a line no parent should cross. And now you're standing here justifying it with career fulfillment. She said nothing. Because there was nothing left to say. I moved into the guest room that night. Not because I was trying to punish her, but because I needed air. Space. Separation. The kind you don't get by pretending things are just rocky or a rough patch. No, this wasn't a storm we could wait out. This was a breach. And I knew it was permanent. Brandon noticed the shift immediately. He didn't say anything, but the way he hovered in doorways, the way his eyes darted between us at breakfast, it was all there. I knew I had to talk to him. So that weekend, I took him out for a drive. No destination. Just us and the road. After 20 minutes of silence, I finally spoke. Your stepmom and I, we're separating. He nodded slowly, but he didn't seem surprised. I figured. You did. You've been sleeping in the guest room. And Mom always told me when grown-ups start making coffee separately, things are done. That made me laugh. Just a little. He looked out the window. Are you okay? I will be. He didn't ask anything else. He didn't need to. Some part of him had probably felt this coming the day she drove him home from that club. Rachel didn't beg. That surprised me. I expected tears, bargaining, maybe even anger. But instead, she just sat me down one night and handed me a piece of paper. Her part of the settlement. She was giving up any claim to the house. I don't want this to get ugly, she said. Brandon deserves peace. I nodded, though my throat tightened. I hadn't loved perfectly. I hadn't always been present. But I'd tried. And now, we were unraveling in a way I never imagined. You can stay as long as you need, I said. Until you find a place. She nodded. Thank you. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. Just nodded. Two people trying to hold on to some sliver of dignity in a mess they created together. Brandon asked to speak with her privately that week. I left them in the living room and stepped outside, pacing the backyard like I was waiting for a verdict. When I came back in, Rachel had tears on her cheeks, but Brandon looked relieved. What did he say? I asked once she came into the kitchen. He said he forgave me. But he asked me not to reach out unless he initiates. My stomach dropped a little. He needs space, she added. I understand. I hurt him. I broke something I can't fix. I nodded. But something about her calmness felt off. Like she wasn't saying everything. Later that week, I got the full truth. It came from an unexpected place, an old friend of hers named Jamie. She'd been to our house once or twice. I ran into her at the grocery store. Hey, Tom. I heard about you and Rachel. I'm sorry. Thanks. I hope this isn't out of line, but did she ever tell you why she really left her last job? I blinked. She said it was due to restructuring. Jamie gave me a strange look. No. It was because she broke the company's ethics policy. She got too involved with a teenage client's family. Crossed boundaries. Her license was almost suspended. I felt the blood drain from my face. You're sure? She nodded. She told me everything at the time. Said it was just emotional involvement, no physical lines crossed. But it got messy. And her supervisors forced her out quietly to avoid scandal. When I got home, I confronted Rachel. She didn't deny it. I was trying to help a kid whose parents were divorcing, she said. I overstepped. I got emotionally attached. It ruined everything. And you never told me. I was ashamed. And I wanted a fresh start with you. I thought if I could build something new, maybe it would erase the chapter. But instead, you repeated it. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean to. I swear, Tom. I didn't mean to do it again. But you did. And now it's not just your career that's ruined. You jeopardized our family. My son's well-being. I know, she whispered. And that was it. That was the moment I knew I'd never trust her again. We finalized everything quietly. No court battle. No shouting matches. She moved out 2 weeks later. Brandon watched her go from his bedroom window, but he didn't say goodbye. He wasn't ready. And maybe he never would be. Life after her was strangely calm. Empty in places, yes. But also, still. There were no more whispered fights behind closed doors. No more lies waiting to be uncovered. Just the sound of a house breathing again. Brandon and I started doing small things together, movies, basketball in the driveway, late-night talks over pizza. One night, a few months later, he asked me something that stayed with me. "Do you think people can change, Dad?" I thought about Rachel. About the lies. The way she kept returning to the same patterns, even when she claimed she'd learned. "I think they can try," I said. "But real change is hard. It takes time. And it means facing the darkest parts of yourself without flinching." He nodded slowly. "Then I hope I never become someone who hides from that." I smiled. "You won't. You've already seen what it does." But even after everything, I still thought about her sometimes. Rachel. Not the one who lied or deceived, but the version I fell in love with. The one who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen. Who laughed too loud during comedies. Who made Brandon feel seen, at least for a while. Grief doesn't always come from death. Sometimes, it comes from watching someone you love vanish while standing right in front of you. They say time heals all wounds. But some wounds don't need healing. They need to be remembered. Because forgetting means you're willing to let the same mistake happen again. And I wasn't going to let that happen, not to me, and definitely not to my son. Still, when Rachel called me 3 months after she moved out, something in me stirred. Not longing. Not love. Just curiosity. She asked if we could meet. Just to talk. I hesitated. But eventually, I said yes. We met at a quiet diner on the outskirts of town. A place with flickering neon lights and cracked leather booths. The kind of place that feels frozen in time. Seemed fitting, considering everything between us had frozen too. She walked in slowly, a little thinner than I remembered. Less polished. More human. She gave a small, uncertain smile. "Hi." "Hey." We sat across from each other like strangers. Two people with too much history and too few words. For a while, we just sipped coffee. Finally, I broke the silence. "Why now?" Rachel wrapped her hands around her mug like it was a lifeline. "Because I realized something," she said. "About myself. About what I did." I didn't interrupt. I let her speak. "I've spent my whole life trying to help people, families, kids, couples. But I was never willing to admit how broken I was. I wrapped my identity in being a caretaker because it gave me a sense of control." She looked down. "But when things got messy, when I crossed lines, I'd just move on and pretend I hadn't. I told myself it was all part of helping. But it wasn't. It was me avoiding my own pain." I nodded slowly. "That story about your last job," I began. She winced. "You found out?" "I did. I wanted to tell you so many times, Tom. But I was terrified you'd see me the way I see myself, selfish, reckless, incapable of boundaries." I didn't respond right away. Because the truth is, I had seen her that way. Still did. But I also saw the person she was trying to become. "I don't hate you, Rachel," I said quietly. "But I can't go back. Not after what happened. Not after what almost happened." "I know." She paused. "But I needed you to hear it from me, not for forgiveness, but so I can finally stop hiding from it." For a moment, her eyes watered, but she held the tears back. That was the difference now. She wasn't performing. She was just raw. Real. And in that moment, I felt something unexpected. Peace. The conversation only lasted an hour. No declarations. No second chances. Just closure. When we stood outside the diner, the sky had turned orange with sunset. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I told her. She nodded. "Me too. And Tom." "Yeah. Tell Brandon. I'll always regret the pain I caused him. But I'll never stop hoping he's okay. I'll tell him when he's ready to hear it." She gave a faint smile. "That's fair." Then she walked away. No drama. No backward glance. Just gone. Brandon was on the back porch when I got home, fiddling with a guitar he barely knew how to play. I sat beside him, and we listened to the wind rustle through the trees. After a minute, he asked, "Was it her?" "Yeah." "What did she want?" To apologize. To say goodbye. He nodded. Strummed a few awkward chords. You want to know what she said? I asked. He looked at me. Not yet. And that was okay. Life didn't magically fix itself after that. There were still moments of sadness. Times when I'd reach for a second coffee mug in the morning before remembering I lived alone now. Times when Brandon would sit quietly at dinner, lost in his thoughts, and I'd wonder if he was reliving that night in his room. But slowly, we settled into a new rhythm. We started cooking together more. Watching old sitcoms. Going for hikes. He was healing. And so was I. 6 months later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just a name. Rachel. Inside was a single page. Handwritten. Tom. I'm not sure if you'll ever read this. I'm not even sure if you should. But I needed to put it on paper. I started seeing a therapist. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I realized I've spent my whole life treating guilt like a fire I had to put out, instead of a signal telling me something was wrong. I won't defend what I did. But I want you to know I've learned more in the last few months than I ever did in my years as a counselor. Funny how we think helping others means we've helped ourselves. Please tell Brandon. I understand his silence. And I will respect it. But if he ever wants to talk, I'll be here. Thank you for giving me the time to become someone better. Not for you. Not for him. But for me. Rachel. I folded the letter, sat with it in my lap for a long time. Then I tucked it into a drawer. It wasn't time to show it to Brandon. But maybe one day it would be. By the time summer rolled around, Brandon had found his confidence again. He started applying to colleges. Not the flashy, faraway ones. He wanted to stay close. Said he wasn't ready to go too far just yet. I didn't push him. He'd already been forced to grow up fast, too fast. Now, I just wanted him to move at his own pace. One night, as we sat outside watching the stars, he said something I didn't expect. Dad. Yeah. I think I might want to talk to her. Just once. I looked over. You sure? He nodded. I don't want a relationship. But I want to let go of the weight. The silence. I reached into the drawer the next day and handed him the letter. He read it alone in his room. He didn't say much after. But a few days later, he asked for her number. He called her. I didn't listen in. Didn't ask what they said. That was between them. But when he came out afterward, he looked lighter. And he hugged me, tighter than he had in a long time. I won't lie and say everything tied up neatly after that. This wasn't a movie. There were still scars. Still regrets. But there was also healing. Real healing. The kind that comes slowly. Honestly. One step at a time. A year after Rachel moved out, I stood in Brandon's high school auditorium, watching him give his graduation speech. He spoke about second chances. About mistakes and resilience. About how sometimes the people you look up to fall. And how that doesn't mean you stop loving them. It just means you learn from them. I sat in the third row, wiping away tears I didn't expect. Because that boy, my boy, had found his voice. And it was strong. Clear. Unshaken. After the ceremony, I saw Rachel. She stood at a distance, near the parking lot. She didn't approach. She didn't intrude. She just stood there, watching him, hands clasped, eyes full of pride. Brandon saw her, too. He gave a small nod. Not an invitation. Just acknowledgement. And for now, that was enough. Sometimes, the people we love break us. Not because they're evil. But because they're lost. And if we're lucky, if we're really lucky, we learn how to rebuild without hating the ones who knocked down the walls. Rachel didn't become the villain of my story. But she also didn't stay the hero. She became something else. A chapter. One that mattered. One that taught me everything I needed to know about love, boundaries, and letting go.